All right, good morning, everybody. Trust everybody had a nice ride on the way in. I think we're early on the blossoms and the tree buds. Do you see the tree buds and everything? I think we're early. I don't think it's ever, and that's why my phone is ringing so much too, because typically we have snow and everybody's like, oh, you're not here yet? I'm like, yeah, well, yeah, it is only the second week of April. So anyway, I'm gonna grab my pencil. Oh, all right. All right, so today we're going to be starting our next lesson, which is lesson number 8. But before we start that, I don't know, does anybody want to take a shot at the memory verse from last week, or from our last lesson?
Say that again?
Does anybody want to take a stab at the memory verse from last lesson? Which is Romans 12:1 and 2.
I can do it at home, but here I don't know.
I know, that's the way it is too.
I can do it, so.
I can do it sitting at the kitchen table, and I can do it while I'm sitting on my tractor, but I get up here in front of people, and I'm like, oh, goodness gracious. So anyway, does anybody want to try it? Pardon me? Anybody?
Shall I? Let's see. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, good.
I beseech you therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy, acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service. And be not conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God.
Excellent. Romans 12:1 and 2. Very good. Thank you, Shelley. Very good.
I could try it.
All right.
Romans 12:1. I beseech you, brethren, that you present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service. And be not conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that ye may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God.
All right. Excellent. Excellent. 2 for 2. Anybody else? John just cleared his throat because he wants to. Go ahead. No. Just trying to breathe. All right. Excellent. Well, we're 2 for 2, so maybe we just leave it at 2 for 2, I guess. All right. So we're gonna start our next lesson. And our next lesson is lesson 8, and the title the title is A Passion for God, and it's part 1 of 2, and it has the thought of embracing personal intimacy with God. So, let me see here. We're going to look up a few words, or talk about a few words to start with. Well, let's read our text verse to start with. And our text verse is going to be Revelation 3:20. And we're going to go ahead and start it out. Mr. B, go ahead. What does Revelation 3:20 say?
Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If any man hear my voice and open the door, I will come into him and will sup with him, and he with me.
All right, so let's think about this a little bit. Think about our behold. Well, what does behold mean? Anybody have, what does behold mean here in this situation? Be aware. Well, pay attention. It has all that kind of, that general meaning, yes, and it has the thought of see. And if you're going to be aware, you want to see it. If there's a sign, or if there's some of this thin ice or whatever, you want to see that. You don't want to go out there, right? But it has here, see. I stand at the door and knock. What does that mean? What does that mean? Someone knocks on the door. What are they doing?
Announcing their presence.
Well, they're rapping on it, right? So they're kind of rapping, they're knocking on the door, they're trying to get your attention, right? Or they're there. They want to let you know they're there, right? You ever knock on anybody's door? Sometimes you knock on the door, it's kind of like you really don't want to answer. Maybe you want to, yeah, you really don't want to talk to them, but and then sometimes you kind of really want to get their attention, you really knock on the door. But we have really thought that, see, or behold, I stand at the door and knock. And if any man hear my voice, now, what do we have here with a thought for hear?
Listen.
Yeah, has a couple things to hear, of course, has to listen or it talks about the ear,
Yeah.
but then also has to talk about to come and understand. To understand my voice and open at the door, I will come in to him and will sup with him. Now, what does that mean? Sup with him, what is that?
Have fellowship.
To eat or to dine or to, it has the thought of to dine with him and he with me. Now, I don't know. Maybe I pick on these young guys here today because I think I'm going to pick on the young guys here a little bit. Or I could pick on, I could pick on someone. Who should I pick on? I have the ability to pick on whoever I want.
Allie?
Well, I'm not picking on the other. Let's see here. Okay, let's go. We're going to go with Daniel today because what do you do? Have you ever taken your wife out to dinner? Huh? Now, if you take your wife out to dinner, what do you do? What are some things? Not to get too, but what are some of the things if you took your wife out to dinner, Sarah? What would you do?
Maybe a little extra chivalrous. Pull out the chair for her, let her sit down.
Yeah. And you would, of course, and I tell you, this is one thing that's hard for me. And my wife, if she was sitting here, she would acknowledge it. Like if I go to dinner with my wife, nowadays, unfortunately, you got 1,000 TVs all over the place. And there's something about, I don't know if anybody else has the trouble that I have, but when I get to a restaurant, they got monitors and TVs and different games, and of course, then NASCAR comes on one or something. But then I'm but when I go to dinner, and when you go to dinner with your wife, it's what? How many people?
One-on-one.
One-on-one, right? You're gonna sit at them. You're sitting at the table, and you're having a relationship with your wife. You're talking to your wife, and you're what? You're
Having fellowship, good communication.
and you're focused and paying attention to her, aren't you? Yeah, you better. Else you can get a slap across the face if you don't, right? But anyway, but the thought here is, I'll come and sup with him and he with me, and we're talking again a passion for God, embracing a personal intimacy with God. So here we have some thoughts here, and so let's go ahead. We're gonna define a few words. And you other guys are coming up. I'll pick on you a little bit here in a minute too. But we got here. Let's define passion. What is passion?
An intense feeling.
Okay, an intense feeling. Anybody else? What does passion mean? Oh, desire. Okay, that's a good one. All right. What else?
Dedication to a specific thing.
Okay, all right. So we go ahead and we look through our dictionary. We have here a strong or powerful emotion. Passion can be an emotion, but it can be. What are some emotions that we can have passion with? Well, anybody ever get angry about something, passionate about something, they get angry, right? That's what we don't want to we shouldn't have that one shine through us too much. What else can there be? Of course, you can be joyful, right? It has the thought of powerful emotions such as love and affection, enthusiasm, devotion, and fervent. It has a thought of something that's fervent. I should have looked up fervent. Does anybody know what fervent means? I has the thought of just being like hot or something like that, or really intense, I think, doesn't it? Does anybody know? Does anybody got it? They can look it up. What's fervent? All right. So that has a thought with that. Now, a passion for God, embracing. Now, what is embracing? When you embrace something, what do you do? That's kind of like that ostrich that sticks his head in the sand, right? It's kind of, what is it to embrace something? What is it to embrace? Embracing personal intimacy. What is it to embrace? Well,
First thing I think it was
Lift
a hug.
up.
yeah, it could be a hug, but
Lift up.
when you embrace something, you kind of you accept it. Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. When you embrace it, you face it. You don't just kind of walk away from it or kind of disappear or just pretend it don't exist. You kind of embrace it. You take it by the horns and you go. But it has here the to adapt or support willingly or eagerly or eager acceptance. All right. So accepting, embracing personal intimacy with God. So we got here personal, something that's personal. Now we talked about Dan and Sarah going out to dinner. It was personal. It was him and Sarah, him and his wife, and you know, it was one-on-one. Personal. What is personal? Well, the definition has the thought of, I gotta get my spot here. Done for one or directly towards a particular person. Concerning a particular person and his or her private business interests or activities. So it's, again, you're kind of focused, you don't have everybody else and other things involved, but you're focused on one person. And then we have here, that's personal, and then intimacy. What is intimacy? Well, intimacy is a close, personal acquaintance, or I can't pronounce it. Familiarity. Is that right? Help me out, Janet. You're always familiar. I can't. It's not coming off my tongue. Yeah, that's how it has it. Very personal or private. Now, if you went out to dinner and you were talking with your wife or your spouse, you probably wouldn't talk about those same things with you or with guys. At least you better not. You shouldn't be. Now, unfortunately, there are people that do that, and that's not right. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about a personal relationship with God. So anyway, so we have here the thought of, behold, I stand at the door and knock, and if any man hear my voice, I will open the door, and I will come into him, I will sup with him, and he with me. So we think about, we've been talking about what in our last few lessons? We've been talking about going from youth to, call them junior adults to adulthood, right? And one of the first steps to embracing adulthood with the biblical passion is what? Well, we need to be able to have and embrace a personal, intimate relationship with God. So we're gonna, again, this is gonna be, obviously it says part one. There are gonna be two parts in this we're gonna talk about. But we're gonna talk, in this first part, it's gonna talk about walking with God and developing a personal passion for Him. So let's think about what are some of the basic things that have in a relationship? How do relationships develop?
Spending time together.
Oh, spending time together. Okay, all right. What else? What is another one? That's a good one.
Communication.
Communication. Oh, that's a good one. Yeah. And communication is what? Texting nowadays, right? Sometimes that don't go so well, right? But texting, well, that's one way to communicate. Or it could be verbal. Back in the old days, it used to be writing, I suppose. It could be a phone conversation. But yeah, you're communicating. All right. So what else? What are some other things?
Learning about their values.
Okay. You have a care about them, or you have a concern for them. Why are you sneaking off there, young man? I was gonna hit you next. No. I'll save one for you. All right. So, okay, so what else? Now, is this something we do just once in a while? Is this something we do, once a year, twice a year? Is that gonna be very personal, or is that gonna be a very good relationship? That'll be kind of an acquaintance, maybe you might have a conversation, or pass by the street maybe once in a while. But we're talking about a consistent communication, or consistent time with. Now, what's another thought? Another one. The word I'm looking for here, much. Begins with a Q. Quantity, yeah, quantity, yeah. You have lots of it, right? It's not just an occasional thank you. I didn't know I was going to pull that one out. I just said thank you. You helped me out with it. You read my mind, girl. Thank you. Anyway, so we have the thought here of there's quantity of time. It's not just to pass by the street or maybe a phone once. We'll call someone every Labor Day weekend or something. It's a lot of quantity. And what? If you have a relationship with someone, it's you what? It doesn't just stop, right? It does what? It
Grows.
It grows and continues. Yes, it grows and continues. All right? And something that it's continuous. And something that's continuous is, it continues and it goes. So anyway, in this lesson we're going to focus on breaking out of a redundant. Now, what is something that's redundant? We're going to talk about how to break out of a redundant and impersonal religious practices. Sometimes, if you get something that gets redundant, what does it mean?
Just going through the motions.
Yeah, it gets just kind of repetitive. You kind of get a cycle. You kind of, we're creatures of habit. So, first thing you're doing it, but are you doing it? Is it happening for the right reasons? Is it the right motivation? Is it just, we're talking passion for God here. We're not talking just kind of, same old, not, oh, dear, I got to do this. We're talking something that we ought to want to do, a desire to do. So we have here that we're looking to break out repetitive or the redundant impersonal practices, religious practices, and to develop a dynamic personal walk with God. We ought to desire to have a dynamic personal walk with God. Now, I guess this could get us guys in trouble, I suppose, but man, for us married folks and married do you treat your spouse like you first did when you first started courting or when you first were married and dating?
Better.
Huh? Well, that's a great answer, but sometimes we can do what? We can get that repetitive thing, can't we? We ought to be better. I wish I could say the same thing to you, but I kind
I
of...
said that because I know what you're thinking.
Oh, you can't. Well, all right. You got the right answer, right? But in all honesty, like I say, it's true. We get in time, Dan and Sarah, you're young, and I got Matthew. I got to pick on Matthew over here too. And Matthew and Megan, they're young and they're, but as you get older, like me, and I'm not making excuses, I got to kind of focus on that a little bit. But and this is the same thing with our walk with God. We need to we ought not be redundant and repetitive about it. It ought to be something we have a passion for, something we have a desire for. But this personal walk with God. So we want to understand that walking with God is a personal and intimate experience. And it requires what? Anything that's worthwhile requires what? Ooh, it requires work. It requires investment, right? You got money in the bank, right? Well, you probably worked hard for it and you had to save it. You just blew it. There wouldn't be any money in the bank, right? But you get what you put into it, right? It has a great investment of time and heart. And after all, how ought we to serve God? We just had this scripture in our last study. It should be there, Deuteronomy what? Anybody remember it? You got it back in their notes, Deuteronomy 6:5. How ought we serve the Lord?
Our heart, mind, soul.
Yes, very good, thank you. All right, so as we go through this lesson, we want to be able to see that a relationship with God should be personal. It shouldn't be something that's something that's personal. It's one-on-one. It's you and God. We ought to be motivated to have a daily walk and a personal walk with God. Understand that God's heart to fellowship with us, and God desires to fellowship with us and to have a personal relationship with us, like a father and a son, or a father and a daughter, or like a father with his children. Then we want to begin to hopefully devote more of our time in our personal devotions and prayer and being with God. And after all, how do we commune with God? How do we communicate with God? Can't text him. Can't do that, can we? I guess you could have a dummy file and you could just say, okay, yeah, I'm going to text to God. But I mean, we talk to God through prayer, right? I don't want to encourage that. I'm just saying. I mean, you could. I have a dummy thing in here that I just put extra notes on and stuff. But anyway, the thought is it's personal and it's communicating. All right. All right, so again, we'll read our text verse again. So, behold, I stand at the door and knock, and if any man hear my voice, and open the door. Oh, what is that? Anybody catch that? Now, when someone knocks on the door, now we talked about sometimes I knock on the door and I knock kind of soft. And I really don't want anybody to answer it. Sometimes they knock real loud, so I'm trying to get their attention, you know, I got a question. Now, it has here the thought that someone's knocking on the door and we're on the inside now, right? So when someone knocks on the door, what happens? Well, yeah, we probably, unless of course it's some, maybe back in the day it could have been a tax collector, maybe they wouldn't open it or something, you know, but we're talking about God here. So we're talking, we want to open the door. It doesn't say he's going to break it down, it doesn't say he's going to bust in. It says that, so it shows here that, and open the door. I mean, so we have to open the door. Now we have to open the door to allow him to come in or something like that. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying we have to respond. I'll come in and we'll sup with him and he with me. All right. So we have the thought here again of, we're going to have the thought, just we'll kind of imagine our table for two, right? Yeah, you know, if you want to be romantic and have the candles out and stuff, you know, thinking about that kind of thing, that's fine. But the thought here is that it's personal, and that's what we're trying to get. Not so much. I'm just gonna be quiet. I'm not gonna say anymore. I'm just gonna keep talking. That we're having a table for two, and it's for you, and it's for someone, and it's important. So now let's think about this. This is a pretty good question, Josh. You're no longer 5 years old, right? Now, when you fell over, skinned your knee, got hurt, what'd you do? Huh? Who'd you run to? Huh? Yeah, but what'd you do? Who'd you cry and what'd you do usually? 5 years old. Think back at 5 years old. If you remember that, you fell over, skinned your knee, hurt yourself. What'd you do?
I ran to mom.
Yeah, ran to mom, right? Run to mom. Why do you run to mom? Yeah, get a Band-Aid. She'd comfort you, talk to you. She'd take care of you, right? Now, sometimes Dad, if he wasn't at work, I could do the same thing. But you know, sometimes Dad say, "Come on, toughen up, get up, come on, get up, do it. Let's jump the bike again." You know. So anyway, but when you were 5 years old, we all probably were at the point in our life where we're at 5 years old, we fell, scraped our knee or our elbow, we ran to mom and dad, right? You look for someone who cared, right? You look for someone that cared, someone that's going to take care of you, someone that's going to help you out. Someone who loved you, someone who cared for you, someone who you were close to, right? That was everything. You just didn't walk up to a stranger on the street, did you? Probably not. And we don't encourage that as parents. We don't encourage our kids to walk with some stranger on the side of the road anymore. But you ran for someone that you looked for, right? You were close to. Part of the emotional struggle of growing up is knowing to run to when you need help. So, like say, you not as young adults and as we grow up, we can run to mom and dad, but we can't always run to mom and dad. But so at that point, where do you run? Where are you gonna go? So again, that's part of the emotional struggle of growing up, is to know who to run to for help, knowing who to turn to for strength. All right. So we can always go to mom and dad. But let's think about this. Where do many young people today turn to? Where do many young people today, where do they turn? Friends. Now, sometimes that can be like the blind leading the blind, can't it? And then especially, okay, so we got friends. That's a good answer. That's one that we have written down here. It's one I jotted down. Okay, how about some other? Where would people turn? Where would young adults turn to, or even adults? It can be even adults. You know, this is for both. But where else do they turn?
Maybe the boss.
Friends, or maybe a coworker or a boss. Okay, yep. And you're supposed to seek counsel. You can seek counsel, but you know we weren't okay. Now where else? What are some other things that they turn to?
Alcohol or drugs?
Yes, that's another one. Unfortunately, some people turn. They want to kind of make the problem go away, or they have a struggle, or they have something they just want the problem to go away, right? And they try to mask it, they try to bury it someplace. But when they turn to drugs and alcohol, what does that typically do? Does that solve the problem? What does that typically do? Typically, that just makes it prolong it. What's the word for? Not prohibit. I can't think of the word. It makes it longer. It just kind of prolongs it. Thank you. It prolongs it. It just kind of puts it aside. But then, when they come to their senses, and the drugs and alcohol is gone, what? It's still there, and it's worse because maybe now something else happened during that time. So, some people, and they turn to, some people turn to parties or a party life, or just kind of forget about it, fun, just enjoy things and forget about it, right? And other pleasures that people can turn to, okay? But some people maybe just go to, well, I can't pick on just Starbucks, but I'll pick on Starbucks. How about Big B's? They get a coffee and they just kind of hope it goes away, right? How's that work? Anybody ever try that? Just kind of going, I turn to a Mountain Dew, right? But does it go away? It doesn't go away. And they just ignore it. They just hope it goes away. But everybody turns somewhere. Where do you turn? I hope I know what your answer is. And Mr. B, you gonna give the right answer on this one? Because hopefully you're gonna give the right answer on this one. But we ought to certainly be able to and desire to turn to God, right? So where do you run? Where do I run? Where does one run? If you have a personal relationship and established Him as your refuge in life, right? We talked about that in our last lesson too. We had talked about a refuge. We think about you don't just how do you want to say it? When you know God personally and you've established your life upon Him, you don't run. You seek refuge. You refuge. And what is it to refuge? What is refuge? What is refuge?
A safe place.
A safe place. A place that provides protection. Very good. Or shelter. A lot of times, we got the Great Lakes around here, and I don't know, Sutton's Bay, sometimes you'll see storms kick up, and there'll be a lot of wind, and there'll be a ship in the bay there in Sutton's Bay, or you'll see them, sometimes you'll see ships in Traverse here, but it's a place that provides protection. So, in some sense, becoming an adult is about letting go of parental comfort. We think about being comforted by parental comfort. And as you go into adulthood, and you can always call mom and dad, but on the same token, we've got to embrace heavenly comfort. Seek the Lord. Seek God. It's about letting go of parental provisions and embracing heavenly provisions. There's a transition that has to be made. And again, let's say you can always call your folks, Josh, you can always call him Dr. Me. Not saying that Tim or Molly, Sarah, talk to your spouses too, but hey. But if you need, you can talk to mom and dad. But you need to ultimately look to your heavenly provision. Look to the Lord. And if you fail to make that transition, and if you don't make that personal, intimate relationship with God, your life will become confusing. You won't know where to turn. You won't be able to gather and get the right answers. All right. So here's an illustration of from our author. He shares with us that he said he was halfway through the first year of college, I believe, and these were the words that were spoken to me midway through my freshman year of Bible college by a man in his 70s. Oh, well, who did we just talk about in our last study? Yeah. Huh?
The surfer,
Well, it was the surfer dude, but who was the text about?
Joshua.
Joshua, right? So Joshua, we think of Joshua, what did he do? Well, of course, he kind of, in the beginning, he was told by God to, what?
Spy out the land.
Spy out the land, but...
Are we further into the story?
Yep. But to trust in Him, to be strong, to be courageous, right? Yep. Yeah, and he was going to do it too. But he was told that many times, but as he got older, he was encouraging the youth to look forward. But here we have this guy, he's talking to a 7-year-old man, and he said here, I lost my spot. Let me see. Okay. He was talking to the author of the book here, and he was the author of the book was through his freshman year of college, and he was kind of out of his comfort zone. Anybody ever been out of their comfort zone?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's not a good place to be. But he wasn't in his comfort zone. He left home, and here he finds himself at college in a strange place. And there had been tough times and trials since he'd been in college, but He was lonely. He was emotionally lonely. Like I say, his parents, he wasn't around his parents anymore. And through the transition of the first year. And he says he entered that transition at 18-year-old, as an 18-year-old kid with a close, happy family, a good childhood, and a lot of dreams and desires to move forward. But he found himself spiritually, emotionally, and mentally dazed, as though reality had hit him in the face with a railroad tie. Hopefully nobody's been hit in the face with a railroad tie, because that would really hurt. But you know, you come to it, it's like, wow, what is going on here? Kind of attention grabber, right? But he was surrounded by friends in classes and activities in college, but the noise of his internal growing pains were drowned out the rest of his life. His heart felt though he was being crammed through a strainer. Does anybody? I use the expression "drag through a keyhole backwards." That's what my dad always used to say. I feel like, you know, if you were not feeling good or if you were kind of out of sorts, you know, he was dragged through a keyhole backwards. Does that make sense? Nowadays they don't have keyholes, like the old skeleton keys. Remember those? Yeah. So anyway, but he was far from home, and he was on his own, and he was utterly lonely. And he found out how unprepared he was for this transition. Emotions called him backwards, and they called him where? They called him back to home. You know, you ever think that way? You just want to go back to your comfort zone. You know, you get out of your comfort zone, you want to get back into your comfort zone. But would that be, what would that be? That wouldn't be following God's plan. If that would be God's plan, is to be moving forward. But we remember we had the thought of, you know, the first lessons of what's holding you back. You know what I mean? You got to move forward. And but he was, but he wanted to go back home, back to family, back to familiarity, and back to comfort. But God was calling him forward. He felt that he was to be in school, and he was to be in the Bible college where he was at. And God was calling him forward in faith, forward in growth, and forward in transition. Again, there's a transition, but it was tough. Anything worthwhile is what? Worth doing, but it's going to take effort, right? It's going to be tough. It's not easy. If you want to have, if you want to put money aside in the bank account, what's that going to take? Well, it's going to take some effort. You're going to have to get a job, aren't you? You're going to have to get a job. You have to work and earn your income, and then do what? Not just go foolishly spend it, right? You have to save it. It's going to take effort. It's going to take discipline, right? But he was. It was tough, he says. Okay, so my friends were experiencing it too, but for some reason never talked about it. Strangely, I was immersed in a sea of people facing similar trials, but felt utterly alone. And yes, here's the thought that peace momentarily returned to my heart when I went home for 3 days for Thanksgiving break. Stepping off the plane into our family's minivan released a massive surge of emotions that swept through me like a long-awaited sigh for the soul. But all too quickly, Thanksgiving came and went, and then he was back in school. So he says and shares that when a cold January returned, so did the coldness of life. Like the bitterness of frostbite on my heart, emotions and spiritual loneliness returned. The ebb and flow of college life kept my mind occupied most of the time. Classes, exams, activities, and projects kept me in motion, but my life was slowed down. When those quiet moments came late in the evening, the icy winds haunted my heart, and he has here the thought that part of me didn't want this land called adulthood, and it's that transition time he's in. I think we've all probably been through it, right? Kind of, you know, you're just kind of utterly lost and just kind of confused and don't know what's going on, trying to figure it out. But it wasn't warm. It wasn't warm and welcoming like childhood had been. Something was desperately missing. And he has here the thought that I was grateful for friends, but this was an internal struggle that no surface relationship could fix. There was only one relationship that sustained me through that year, and it was his relationship with God. And he has here the thought, he says here that, and so it will be with you. So now we need to only make that transition, and like I say, we can always get comfort and see comfort from mom and dad, but we need to move to that the heavenly comfort and the heavenly provision. And that comes from God. The first and foremost passion in your life, if you can, is to courageously embrace God's plan for your life. Hazard the thought, you must be your own private, you must have and maintain your own private personal relationship with God. God leads us into the storm to show us His presence in our lives. Excuse me, I got a frog in my throat. But we must seek Him and we must draw near to Him. So, I'm trying to think where we're at here. We kind of finished this kind of thought up. So he has here the thought here that it's wonderful that God, that we have studied in the recent pages, desires to know you and to know you personally, and for you to experience with Him life's best rewards. But you must learn how to grow close to Him. We must learn how to grow close to Him. And many Christian young adults have a misunderstanding of the relationship with God. So we're gonna look at some things. We're gonna talk about how to move forward and how we can maintain and keep that personal relationship with God. Okay, we have here number one, and we'll kind of think about it. We'll talk about it a little bit, and then we're going to dismiss. One in our book is going to be a personal God moment.
Personal what?
A personal God moment. God moment. So again, let's see here. And what is that? What is a personal God moment? We've all probably had one of those, or at least we should have. We probably have had many. And what I mean is,
It's when you're asking for strength or help.
and maybe we can all think about, kind of think about one for next week. Maybe you want to share with one, but think about a moment it's etched in your mind that you know it was a God thing. You know, it could be could have been sickness. It could have been, it could have been a lot of things. I mean, I think of Miss Molly Pie back there playing and putting a quarter in her mouth. It's God. But anyway, and we'll have those moments. And why don't we all think of one? And if we all think of one, we can all share them. They can be encouraging. I mean, they're not nothing bad. They're very encouraging. But maybe if somebody wants to share one next week, think about one, we can share them. I got tires that came off cars, and we didn't get in a wreck going 60 miles an hour. There's just things that you know when God has worked in your life, that there's things that are out of your control. There's nothing you can do. Well, another one with my wife, when she had her moment over there, that was kind of rough. Mother's Day. So, you guys, I'm sure you guys have them. And if you want to share a couple, you can too. They don't have to be teary ones or anything. But those are two big ones for me, so.
I know
Yes.
one thing that I know it was God's will is when Mom was living with us, every time she got sick, it was either on a Sunday morning or I worked different shifts, and it was on a shift that I was home.
Oh, that's great. You provide the ability for you to be there. Yeah. No, that's great. No, so we'll a personal God moment. I mean, we all have them. We're all gonna have them. And guess what? I'm gonna have more. And but it's a moment where it's personal. It's something that you have, between you and God. All right. So we're gonna go ahead and we'll stop there. And like I said, again, if you want, you can write 3 down, write 1 down. If you want to share it, great. It doesn't have to be anything earth-shattering or anything, but we all should have it, right? Okay, so we'll stop there, and we'll pick it up next week. And let me see here, Mr. Matthew, would you be so kind as to close us in prayer, please?
Dear Heavenly Father, we just thank you for just the ability you've given each one to be here in your house, Father, and just to hear from you. And just thank you for the Sunday school lesson that we had. And just pray that That you just be with all those that had classes on the other side, Father. Just pray that everyone that was listening would just be paying attention and just striving to just apply these lessons to our lives, Father. I just pray that you'd be with Pastor Graber this morning, that you'd settle him in what you'd have him to bring, Father. That you just give us hearts and ears that are just willing to hear from you, Father. And just pray that you would just lead us and guide each one, Father, as we go throughout the rest of this day, Father. Just pray that everything we do, that it would just be honoring to you, Father. Just pray these things in Jesus' name. Thank you.